A very good evening to everyone who has joined us today for this session. On behalf of TCS ION and our team, I welcome you all to this wonderful session on thinking classrooms. This is a very invigorating topic, and we have got a very special guest with us who is going to be speaking to us her thoughts and her expertise on this particular topic. Thinking classrooms are something for which many teachers strive for. The thinking classroom is more than a series of approaches to learning. It's a philosophy about learning. Teachers who commit to building a thinking classroom environment must also consider how they want their students to think about learning. This metacognition is critical for future academic success. The object of creating a thinking classroom is to get your students to solve problems by thinking through the problem until they arrive at a solution. There is no giving up, opportunity for completing a task satisfactorily. Teaching students how to think for themselves and solve problems is actually an achievement both for teachers and also for the learners. Creating thinking classrooms is loaded with examples, stories, and strategies for reinvigorating schools with this quality thinking. In this session, we have with us an distinguished expert to talk about how to create a thinking classroom. So that is Mary Nadar, a program manager with TCS ION, along with Dr. Niyati Chitkara, will be having a very lively discussion on thinking classrooms to help you understand this concept better. It's my absolute pleasure and an honor to welcome and introduce our guest speaker. Dr. Niyati Chitkara is a highly qualified individual and a dynamic leader with 15 years of rich experience in teaching, school administration, and management. She has been a gold medalist in MA and PhD in education. Dr. Chitkara has also authored a book on assessment quotient. She has also presented papers and chaired sessions and international conferences, seminars, workshops, and training programs. She has several published papers to her credit in national and international journals. She has been honored with Top 40 in field of education, Indian Achievers Award in 2020, the title of Visionary Leader of the Year 2019, Rashtriya Shiksha Gaurav Puraskar as well. Ma'am, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today.
So thanks, Mary, for a wonderful introduction. And thanks, Team TCS ION. I think it's a great platform. And thank you so much. I'm all geared up, to share whatever I've learned over these years.
We'll start with a question and answer session, ma'am. In the meanwhile, audience and participants, if you have any specific questions to ask ma'am or have a discussion with her, you can start posting them right away. We'll be able to take up questions with her and help solve your queries. Ma'am, let us move on to the first question that we have in mind for you. Creating a thinking classroom is essential to effective learning and productive living. Would you share your thoughts on thinking classroom?
Yeah, I think, Mary, this is the question which is closest to my heart because I think, when you talk about thinking classrooms, the first thing that comes to anybody's mind is freedom. In our country or, in other countries per se, education has always been restricted into, curriculum, content, pedagogies, syllabus. But when it comes to thinking classroom, it allows you to breathe, first of all. It allows that freedom of speech, freedom of expression, allows us to fail. What if we think something and that is not real? What if we think something which is fake, which is absolutely stupid? And these are the fears in our mind, when we try to enter, a classroom. And if a classroom allows a learner to feel free, to be happy, to allow his ideas, to nurture. And, why we talk about thinking classroom, I think all the schools the entire infrastructure should be a thinking infrastructure. The moment you enter gates of a school, I think the thinking, your gray cells should start ticking. So that is where I feel that, schools should be fun, first of all, because if you have fun, then you start thinking. And also, I think even the classrooms, our classrooms are extremely boring places. And that is where, the entire creativity gets killed. And the moment we step out of those classrooms into a real world, There are a lot of people and a lot of case studies where we've seen people doing phenomenally well because somewhere they were allowed to breathe, somewhere they were allowed to fly high. So thinking classrooms are extremely important. And I think the corridors, the hallways, the walkways, they should all be thinking and intriguing areas of the school. Also, I think that, in our school, I'd like to share if, there's an educator community listening to the program, that, walls should talk to the students, report cards should talk to the students. And I think classrooms should be hybrid classrooms. Post pandemic, we're all into a virtual setting. But, once back, we have to take out measures to make sure the students get back with full rigor, with full enthusiasm, with full excitement. So the classrooms have to be extremely engaging. So I think what we've done in our school is we've divided the classroom into a hybrid classroom. So what if a classroom has a theater and auditorium inside it? What if a classroom has, an activity corner where the projects are displayed? We call it a project skirting. What if a classroom has something called selfie signages, where if a class has 30 students, all 30 students' works gets displayed. Nobody fails, nobody stands first. It's fearless thinking classroom format. And also a classroom where the furniture is marked into groups of all the clubs that are there in the school. What if in a class, the furniture setting is such where all sports people sit together, all music people sit together, all artists sit together, all coders sit together, and all kind of literature and language people sit together. And why not a history lesson like, we're learning about a Mughal era? Why not that lesson be taught with sports perspective, with artists? What kind of artists used to be there in Mughal era? What kind of literature was available? So, the classrooms can be thinking only when we create an environment like that and we allow the learner to spread beyond books and curriculum and syllabus and also use that knowledge into the real world. There is no point, making dummies sit into your classes and, we're just feeding data. We're not doing anything else. So why not elicit information? Why not play dumb shiraz in the class? Why not dance in the class? So all the dance club people could perform a dance that was prevalent during the Mughal time, and they would think of costumes, they would think of food. Mughal era, Mughalai cuisine is still relevant today, and people from hospitality industry would understand. So why not, students create a dish out of that in that history lesson? Why do we bore students and why do we kill the thinking part? So it's so important that, we create a thinking classroom like that and then let the learner be free. Let him think and let him act. So that's my take on thinking classrooms.
I think this is by far the most creative and innovative classroom that I've ever heard. The way you were describing it to me felt like, you know, that is one place where I would like to be. Even as a child, as you rightly mentioned, we were completely driven by syllabus. This month, this syllabus, so many chapters have to be completed, and that's how our education in school was driven. But now, after the pandemic time, I think it's the right time to change and move to thinking classroom format. When we talk of this, one important aim of schooling should be to create a climate that evokes children's sense of wonder and it inspires their imagination as well. What do you think that teachers can do to kindle this spark and keep it alive in education?
Lovely. I give you an example and you'll have to help me out. I give you a word and you have to tell me some more words out of it. Okay? Shopping. Next word. Sorry?
Clothes,
Okay. Another word. Money.
shoes,
Shoes. Another word.
uh, credit card bills as of now,
Lovely. Another word related.
uh, expenditure.
Perfect. So, from one word, we can weave so many words, right?
Right.
Why do we teach vocabulary? We don't need to teach vocabulary, right? So, real life objects that are there in the world, we can catch hold of those objects and we can start building and weaving words out. And you will never face people having a problem in terms of lack of confidence And oh my God, I've never spoken in my school. I never got a chance to raise my hand. So these are the things
Mm.
that we do in the school. Also, we have something called open book exam. Now the book is
Yeah.
open. Do whatever you want to do. Cheat, but you'll not get the answer. Now that's what is thinking classroom. Then
Right.
concept maps. We have something called word web, word ladder, word episode. We have something called mnemonics. Now this is again a fantastic technique to learn very boring and difficult lessons, right? Then there is something called now research inquiry. So what if I tell you that I'm not going to teach you, right? This is the topic, and I want you to come up with a concept. For example, I tell you you're my student, and I want you to design your own country, right? Keep the name of your own country, design the political maps, design the physical maps, name the rivers and lakes of your choice, name the currency, create a design out of it, right? You don't need to teach. And it is art, English, theater, geography, history, everything gets embedded into one
Politics,
topic.
civics. I think all the subjects come into it. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even mathematics. So you can learn civics out of this topic. You can learn, okay, design your own constitution, design your own cabinets and parliaments. Now there you go, right? So the learning has to be intriguing and challenging. If teachers are boring, then students will eventually be very, very boring learners. So first of all, teachers have to be really interesting. And then you have to see if something is boring to you, it is going to be boring to a student for sure. And education is not something to get bored of. It has to be enjoyed thoroughly. Only then we will have better attendance. Same is the case with online classes. If teachers start boring students, then nobody will stick to those classes. So that's what it is. Then we have a concept where a fifth standard child will teach a fourth standard child. So when you teach, you learn the best, right? So why do you need exams? Okay, so these are the things where I feel that it can be a lot of fun, and that is where sense of wonder and inspiration, as you asked, in the question, and imagination will soar, right? So why do we have to tell students to write essays? Why don't we give a line, what you call a climax of a movie, and tell a child to write on it? Why don't we tell that, okay, I've delivered the lesson, now write summaries in your own words, no word to be copied, right? Why don't we tell a child to design his or her own dictionary? Let us have our own dictionary. So there's so many things we can do to make things very interesting, add that sense of wonder and inspiration to the world of the learner.
That's very true. I think you rightly mentioned that the more creative teachers are in the way they take the lessons is how the creativity would reflect on a child and make the students as well creative. And you have right now mentioned, I think, quite a lot of ideas that many teachers and students, or even parents for that matter, can use for their child to make even their home a thinking home. That brings me to my next question from what you shared
All free
earlier.
of cost
It's
ideas,
important.
everybody. These are all free of cost ideas, no money, no infrastructure. You just have to think. Sorry, yeah.
That's true. That's true. And audiences, whoever are a part of this, if you've got questions on this, you can start posting them right away and just give you a reminder. Let's move on to the next one. It's important for our students to be productive members of the workforce. How can schools better prepare students to meet the challenges through making them thinking persons, or building a thinking persona inside of them?
So, Mary, the thing is that I come from an organization that has two universities and one school. Now, two schools, right? And the thing is that when we started working on the school education, we had one school and we were new to school education at that time. So when you're new, then what you do is, you try to understand what's going on in education. And we started building a curriculum which is not kindergarten till 12. It is ulta. It is university to K. So when you move backward, you realize that there are a lot of things that were irrelevant. There were a lot of things which industry and job market doesn't need. Why to teach them, right? Rather, we should be teaching things that help the student get a job. Email etiquettes, negotiation skills, presentation skills, webinar skills. So these are the things, finance. These are the things that should ideally form part of the curriculum. So when we went ulta from two universities, at that time one school, I remember, industry would only hire people, and companies like TCS would only hire people when they find that they are really well skilled. So that is where, it is so important for schools, first of all, to work with the universities and then with the industry. And it is so important for the industry. And I think it's a great initiative by TCS where they are hand holding educators and schools. It is a fantastic exercise because I think that's where, one can train our students on problem solving. We can train our students on bridging the gap between school and university, industry, and school. Then, in our school, we do a lot of hackathons. We do a lot of, Novate challenges, startup challenges. Then we do a lot of industry sessions. We invite industry experts from different areas to tell students what kind of jobs are available and what are the challenges and demands of a particular job. Also, there's so much importance, in terms of career that should be given in our schools, in terms of, the clubs, the disaster management. We have a brigade team in the school. We have student councils. Then, training students on different kind of modules like design thinking, computational thinking. Then we have a special, module on drone, Python learning as a language, intellectual property rights and laws. So these are the kind of things which ideally should form part of school education program. Of course, at varying levels, you have to tailor-made these programs, as per the level of the student. And banking and finance and business correspondence is very important. So rather than training students for board examinations, which is a very short-term vision, we should be training students for employability. That will help our country. That will help our government. So that is where I feel that, so we have something called a Diamond Challenge where every student, we do it with University of Delaware, where every student builds up a business proposal and then they design a product prototype. And then eventually they give presentations to the University of Delaware. And, after that it gets selected and a student gets a seed money to start a business. So this is the kind of system, where we can have productive members of a school and we can build a very, very skillful workforce. So we have to start from school education. Only then industry will, it'll ease the job of the industry because they spend a lot on training students and training the new fresh recruits. Why not share that load of theirs with, the school and higher education stepping into it? So I think that's where we can have more productive, workforce for the future.
So the project that you mentioned, where they create a prototype and you have kind of a presentation done, do they do it at the school level or the university level?
Do it at the school level, and we train them. They don't know what credit means. They don't know what debtors means, and they don't know how to create how to calculate a per unit cost of a product. They wouldn't know what is the formula of revenue. They wouldn't know. So these are the concepts which are taught at higher levels. But we train students because, the sooner it is, the better it is.
That's also a very interesting approach because we did such kind of projects only when we reached kind of the senior college level. Even then there was struggle because that is how the education system is a little aloof from the corporate and the industry standards and workforce, the way that it happens right now. So thank you for that. I'm sure that quite a lot of schools and teachers also can implement this model to get their students thinking creatively and thinking about the future as well as to their career right from a very young age and build themselves up. Dr. Chitkara, for the understanding of our viewers, could you please elaborate what activities can a teacher introduce as a topic to stimulate thinking and curiosity inside the classroom?
There are a lot of activities that teachers can do to make sure that the education is understandable to the learner. First of all, the language. We are a country where we have students from different languages entering our classes. So as far as possible, we can try to be either bilingual or multilingual. If if we do not communicate, it is so difficult for a student to learn, or through other methods, audio, visual, digital content, whatever, first of all. Second of all, what we do here is we have College of Education here, which is a B.Ed college under Chitkara umbrella. And we train teachers. We take a very small batch size and we train them for 2 years. So I'll share those pedagogies and those techniques that we train them on inside a classroom, so as to create, we call them alpha teachers, because they cater to alpha generation learners. And these little ones are very smart these days, they know it all. So how do you train a teacher to create a thinking environment in the class where every learner knows more than the teacher, right? So there are a lot of techniques. First of all, inquiry. Don't feed information. This is a Google generation. They don't need information. Inquiry. Elicit the information from them, right? And then presentation, controlled practice, free practice. So presentation of a teacher should be very, very up to the mark. And also techniques like weaving, chaining, drilling, error correction. Now let's say you're my student and you speak a word incorrectly. Rather than insulting you, or making you feel, embarrassed, why not I use, the input from a student who is the strongest student of the class. Let him correct the error, and unconsciously you get to know that, okay, this was my mistake. Then picture presentation, summary, biographies, audio visual teasers, cinema, again a fantastic tool to be used inside the classroom. Then dumb charades, as I mentioned, digital content, project-based learning, peer learning, experiential learning. So there are lots of methods where a teacher can make the classroom interaction extremely, extremely engaging. So that's about it. And also, I think the way you introduce a topic, it should be like, the way if you see cinema, the way they introduce a movie, right? So there are a lot of innovation and creativity that's happening in cinema these days. It can enter our classes. We can try to have a different seating format. We can try to, the eye contact with the student is so important. The patting on his back is so important. There is a lot of non-verbal communication. So if a teacher is standing in the class, with a stern face, obviously the student will not like it. So there are a lot of things. Humor teaching. I think the best tool in the world is humor teaching. So you start a lesson with fantastic jokes about a lesson. So let's say, today I'm going to be teaching the value of friendship to you. So why not start with nice friendship jokes and then begin that lesson, right? Or songs, or it could be picture compositions, or it could be, as I mentioned, you can have a small phrase, of a story, and then let the child build on it. So there are lots and lots of methods. We also use something called, Cytoons. So these are nice cartoon, making slides that we use. So this is something, which intrigues the child. He finds it very interesting. He wants to stick on to that, and he will use it in his life sometime. So there are so many techniques which a teacher can use. And concept map is also one of the technique where, you use mind maps to kind of, help the learner learn very difficult topics, boring history, social science topics, geography topics, which children run away from. And also working models, so if you come to our school, you'll see a lot of working models on the corridors where, the filtration system has been explained, energy as a topic is explained. And these days, schools get a lot of fantastic STEM and STEAM based kits. So these are all hand-based and experiential learning formats that I'm just sharing with you. So a lot can be done. I mean, it's endless. That's what I say.
I mean, I asked for quite a few ideas, but you just threw down a mountain of ideas for everybody down here. I really love it. Regarding one thing that you mentioned, it's a query that I have, and earlier when I've discussed with quite a few educators, they have this kind of thing in their mind. When you mentioned humor teaching is very effective, but there are times when it could turn around against the teacher as well, because they use humor as a technique for teaching. They joke around. So students sometimes tend to not take them seriously, not follow deadlines, or kind of take their classes very lightly as well. So is that true, or is it just a misconception in teachers' minds?
I think, a lot of thing comes from the classroom management and control. And why is it that we don't want students to have fun? Let them go out of control for a while and then control them. There are so many control measures, that we can adopt at any point of time. And selection of the content is always in the hand of the teacher. And you should always be prepared that the content will go haywire. You can never predict a lesson. You plan it in a way and students behave in a different way. So let them.
Right.
Thinking classroom should be something that allows you to fail, falter, defeat, and they should allow the students to, we have this system of disciplining people and students, inside the classroom. But what if the rules are made by the students? Why not begin a lesson where you start with let's frame rules? Okay, do you want to ask questions in the middle or do you want to ask questions in the end? So majority will say in the end. Or framed. And when you involve them in rule making, they will never break. If you impose rules on people, they will never follow. So remember, this is not a generation that's going to take it. So rather than conditioning them or controlling them or shouting on them is not going to help, right? This system is such where you need to touch the heart of the learner and let him laugh, let him enjoy any kind of content if done it well, with a structure in place, with rules and regulations in place. It would definitely never go out of control. So that's what my experience is.
Yeah, it's better to include them in the decision-making process that they also follow and stick by the rules when you're imposing it on them. That's right. Thank you, ma'am, for that. Do you think the schools and teachers are willing to fundamentally rethink their methods of teaching and make themselves ready for the 21st century?
Big time. Big time, everybody. We all should change because we are not realizing, but the generation is changing. And I've authored a book which talks about Generation Z and Generation Alpha learners, and very soon we're going to be facing beta generation learners. Now, this is a generation where they're not learning ABCD, but they know the mobile buttons very well. They don't know the letters of or the numerals, but they know how to open a window, get into another window, search on Google Speak Now, how to go to the YouTube. When they don't know the spelling of YouTube, how do they go to YouTube, right? So somewhere our teaching methods are outdated. So we need to review our teaching methods. We need to be very quality conscious and we must challenge our teaching every time. So one size doesn't fit all. If some notes that a teacher made 5 years back, she cannot continue with those notes forever. This never happens. So the generation is different, the treatment is different. And, happiness is again one thing which I feel should be part of the curriculum. Because you're not happy. Why the hell are you sitting in that class? Right? If you're not happy, what are you going to do in your workplace? What are you going to do at home? So, the training to how to be happy should be imparted in schools. It is a training. It's an attitude that needs to be built. Otherwise, you keep complaining, you keep cribbing, you be unhappy in life. So these are the things which should enter the classrooms. So we need to think our national education policy, it's very progressive in the nature where it talks about, the entire overhauling of the education system, the schools, the teachers, everything. So, and definitely, by 2030, we're a very, very young economy. We have to make sure that we become employable by that time. So a lot of role and a lot of responsibilities on the shoulders of a teacher. So for B.Ed, what we do is we have different kind of modules that we teach. We teach something called Ed Profile, where we work on the profile of a teacher. Now, teacher has a boring profile. How do you think she can create a fantastic CV of a student? Never, right? And portfolio of a student should start right from kindergarten. It should start from kindergarten. You cannot create a good CV if you don't have a data. What if you get a training on artificial intelligence and you mention in your bio data wouldn't you get a job easily? Right? So these are the things where the child excels must be recorded. Let's say somebody is a very good, artist. He sketches very well. Shouldn't that be added to the bio and credentials of a student? So I think so. Ed profile is important. Ed mentor is important. Social. So teachers also should be trained on different aspects. For example, you have a student in the class who suffers an epilepsy attack in the class, right? Now the teacher is not medically trained. Would she be able to handle? No. And it's going to cost a life of a learner, God forbid, if she's not trained. So you can't just be a teacher. You need to be trained on different aspects. Then we have something called ed manager. There's a lot of management work which teachers do. Today's teacher is, somebody who works like a corporate person, no less than handling the softwares of the school, ERPs, digital contents. We have digital report cards. We create our own digital worksheets. How do you think teachers do that? So that needs a lot of training. And then a global edge. So it cannot be just local. It cannot be just national. Right? So what if, so we have a system here where we have a joint class, we call it a collaborative learning, where a session in Italy's government school is co-joined by our school student. Right? Also, we have something where our students, they have a joint session with government school students. So there's so much of synergy, right? So it's local, right? Local and global, both together. So that's how the teachers should be trained. And then buddy teaching. What if 5-6 teachers take a joint lesson? The way it happens in your organization, you have skill lessons, right? So somebody who's an expert in mechanics will handle mechanics, right? Somebody who's good in language will handle language. Why don't they all assemble together and do a buddy teaching? Right? Then learn faculty development programs, examination, very boring. So teachers need to change their outlook towards examination. So these are the things which scare students. So it's important that, we change big time.
That's very true. We've got a couple of more questions on this. You brought up very important points in the last question that you just answered. One question that I would like to ask you is, for your own schools, when you hire teachers on board, so you would be looking at these particular qualities, or what other parameters you look at when you are hiring teachers for your schools?
When we hire teachers in our school, the first thing and the foremost thing is humanity. She needs to be humane. She needs to be softer. She needs to be fun. And her perspective towards life is very important, because that's going to pass on to my little ones, right? And we have to ensure that we build a very positive generation, but at the same time a generation that can voice their opinions, right? So different perspectives. So if a teacher has varied perspectives, I would definitely love to hire the teacher. And definitely other aspects come, like presentation, her knowledge content, because if a teacher crams the content and comes and appears for an interview, you get to know there and then, right? And also, how much inputs have they given to their own learning programs? If she is a good learner, if she is a good student herself, she'll be a good teacher. In our school, everybody studies. So after students leave at 3, we all study. We all give exams. You cannot create a good question paper unless you yourself give exams. You have those butterflies in your stomach. You're looking for support, help. Oh my God, I'll forget everything. So these are the things, which teachers should have. So if they have that student-ness in them, that is something which will really attract me if I want to hire a teacher.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Earlier during our discussion, you had mentioned your Alpha Teacher program. So do you also train the teachers you have with you on all these aspects that you had mentioned before?
Absolutely. So it's a program where not just my own school, but we have partnered with 65 schools currently. And overall, we have approximately 150 to 200 partner schools with us. So what we do is we jointly run this program, and where we just take a very small batch size of 40 students, 40 teachers, prospective teachers, and we place them in different schools, and we train them for 2 years, right? And we call it internship. Now this internship is very rigorous. So it is so important that teacher is trained on every aspect before she's finally hired. An untrained teacher is a lot of cost to the school, and it is a lot of cost to the nation because it's going to spoil the generations. So it is so important that a teacher who is not prepared should not enter schools. So we follow a concept of mastery learning. Till the time a teacher hasn't mastered a module, she will not move to the next module. So this is something where you have to learn things so that your productivity levels become higher. So this is what we do, and we are blessed to have fantastic schools, who are partners with us, and we keep adding a lot of schools, now and then.
That's great. I'm sure it's a very, very good program that you are running. With the thinking classroom mode, how do you conduct the assessment? So, how does the grading go? How does the marking go? How does the report card system, etc., work?
Okay, now I ask you a question. What if I have to create a report card where I tell you to color your report card?
Okay.
Why do we need numbers? Why do we need letters? Children don't understand numbers. They're all very relative. Somewhere absolute, somewhere relative. Unless you draw what do you mean by 90 in maths? Doesn't make sense. But what if you say that, okay, my friend got a full yellow color, mama, but I did not get full. So I must work hard. I have 2 corners left which are not filled with yellow color. I must work hard on mathematics. Children do not understand all this. Children understand colors, right? And report cards talk. It is so important to not create a dead document. And it is so important to give a real feedback to the students. In our education system, we give feedback to the parents, right? But it's whose report card? It is like, if I have to give your report card and I give it to your relative, it'll make no sense, right? So it's your work.
Right.
You would be interested. I should be giving you a report card, right? And why should I give you a report card? Why don't I extract a report card out of you? Okay, I give you another situation. Okay, tell me, let's say you are a very, very strong student, right? This time with a maths exam. Just quote me how many marks you want to get out of 100. Remember, you're a strong student.
I want to get 100.
100 out of 100? So I'll fix your goal 100 out of 100, right? Mary wants to get 100 out of 100. And she's a strong student. Let's say she doesn't get 100. So what will your report card say? She gets 99. So your report card will say striving to achieve, right? Now let's say, Mary, you are not an intelligent student. You're a slow learner, right? Quote me marks in maths that you want to get.
75.
Slow learner, 40.
Okay.
40, slow learner, right? So I design a timetable for you for 40. We'll work on 40, right? And what if, so we create a timetable, you work hard, we plan your academic studies around that. Let's say you get 45. Now next time, how much will you quote?
I'll quote say 60.
Fantastic. So there's a growth. There's a growth. So report cards should not be dead. They should motivate students. So this is one of the assessment method that we have. Another method is, as I mentioned, 5th standard child teaching 4th standard child. Then open book exam, open web exam. All the more important in a virtual scenario right now. Works very well.
True.
Then a lot of stuff where, we have something called Actometer, where students give presentations. We have something called I Can Act. We have something called digital assessments. We have something called traffic lights. So what if I give you a report card every 2 months, with a traffic light format on your mobile, that you are studying Pythagoras theorem and you got a red light. I tell you 2 months in advance, right? Exams happen 6 months later. Now tell me, you get a red light in advance, you'll start working on it, right? So by the time your exams come, you'll convert that red light into a green light, right? So this is just in time feedback. It is so important because it, instead of telling the child 6 months later, oh, you have not done this, you're good for nothing, you don't study, why don't we tell in advance? And on mobile, it is so accessible. So we have a mobile app where we do all these kind of things. So these are the kind of interesting assessment formats which don't bore the learners.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you're going for a thinking classroom, I guess your reporting and your assessing methods have to be equally creative and based on a thinking format. That really sounds very interesting. I have one more question for you, ma'am. Every child is capable of thinking, yeah.
Right.
But in the current model of education and systems that happens in various schools, the children do not get enough time to think. Right? We are very based on unit tests every 2 months, 3 months. You've got a test, so you prepare for the test, and that's how we move forward. By not giving them enough time to think, are we not stopping their thought processes?
We are rather killing the thought process, not just stopping. Because, I know a lot of foreign universities, and now our national education policy also highlights the fact that go creative. If you see the Bloom's taxonomy, creativity is at the top of the pyramid, right? So and how is it that we are not trying to be creative? So if we do not allow the child to think, why don't we create a thinking curriculum so that we don't have to give him time to think, rather he keeps thinking, and that's how he starts learning, right? And also it is so important to see why we are studying, why we are learning topics like lakes and rivers, why we are learning topics like geometry, right? Trigonometry. How is it going to help us? If we know that, and if we allow the student to think, he will really study better. So it is so important. And there are now schools are going to change post NEP. I hope that, where I suggest to all schools, you should start with 2 report cards. 1 report card for your academics and 1 report card for thinking and co-curriculars. The beauty about co-curriculars is they let you think. Academics stops you thinking, right?
Because your complete focus just
I
moves
say,
on to academic.
right? I tell you to create a painting, okay? So you'll start thinking. But if I tell you to learn a lesson, you'll stop thinking, you'll start cramming. That's how we're conditioned, right? So it is so important that co-curriculars enter our lives. Everybody is an artist. It is just a matter of chance. Everybody is a musician. First 6 years, you get to know what the student will become. Either he's a researcher, or he's a scholar, or he's a scientist, or he's an author. You get to know within first 6 years. Right? So it is so important that we provide that platform. And I wish all schools, all educational fraternity must value co-curriculars rather more than academics. Only then we will be at the top of the creativity pyramid. Right. Okay. Have you seen KBC, Kaun Banega Crorepati?
Yeah.
You've seen that, right? Do you find it fun?
Yeah, it is fun.
Do you find, candidates who appear, they are scared? Are they scared? Or is it fun? Though there's a lot of prize money. But the person who's taking the test, has milestones, benchmarks.
Right.
And you move from one, then you move to another, then you move to another. And it should be fun. So there should not be any measurement. There should not be any evaluation. But there should be assessments. Everything starts from that, and everything concludes on that.
Right. I think in one of the previous sessions that we had with another expert, that ma'am had also pointed out something similar, that when you
Mhm.
ask a child to color the sky, when they're 2 years old or 3 years old, they use all different colors. They may use 12 colors to just color the sky. But
Right.
when it comes to, they're in the second or third standard, they go with blue because then we tell them, no, the sky is blue. So they kind of, condition themselves to that, and that's how they move forward in one straight line without thinking left or right. So that is a pattern that needs to be broken down so that every child who is learning can come out with their own creative aspects and explore different professions and different career paths, and not just move into one straight line along with the rest of the crowd. Ma'am,
Also, I have something to add here, Mary, that
yeah,
the role of the parents is also very important. You live in a creative classroom and you go back to a non-creative zone, right, is not a good match, I must say, because you move from an extremely positive environment, and when you go home, and if you do not get that kind of an environment, if you don't get the appreciation and acknowledgement home, or they do, there's no freedom of expression or speech, so, and there's no love and comfort, then definitely it affects the thought processes of the learner. So it's a lot of responsibility on the parents' shoulder as well.
yes, that's absolutely true. I guess equally, parents play a more pivotal role in getting their child to think more innovatively and creatively. That's
Right.
very true. Ma'am, I've got one last question for you.
Sure.
You have got a very diverse set of experience, and you've got a lot of creativity in the way you have designed the curriculum for your school and training your teachers, and the way you have grown up your unit of schools and university as well. How is it that you enrich your own knowledge? How do you stay up to date, or how do you come up with various different ideas that you could implement in your schools for students as well as teachers?
So first of all, I try to be a student, and I think that answers everything. I give exams, I write papers, I keep writing stuff, I give presentations. Whatever I learn, I share. That's one thing which is so important, and I want it to spread all over. And whatever I've learned, you learn from your teachers. So I've had fantastic teachers, and not just in school but at home as well. So my mother-in-law, father-in-law, they're fantastic teachers. My own parents have taught me so much. My teachers at school, my PhD guide, so many. So I've been blessed with very, very insightful, visionary teachers. So this is my request to everybody. That's how you can affect the mind of a learner. And you don't know what thing helps you in future stages of your life. So this is what I do. And apart from that, research is one thing which is very close to my heart. So I don't work, I research. So whether it's relating to infrastructure, I will research. And we have our emblem. If you see the back side of the emblem, it's a square, and it's a square with four sides, and there are three arrows moving in the right direction. Now the central part is the students, very important stakeholders. Next is the faculty. Next is the community, industry, higher education. And the green color is for the prosperity, growth. And they're all moving in the right direction, upright, which means with right value system. So whatever work I do, we don't follow this green emblem, we don't forget this green emblem. And we try to take every decision, keeping in mind all the stakeholders, including government and statutory bodies. So it is so important. You can't create a school with just one stakeholder in mind, right? If you create something for the student, that might not be good for the faculty, or that might not be good for the government, right? So you have to think of everybody and then work towards the system. So I think that's what I do. Whenever I get stuck, I just try to think of the square, and it helps me take better decisions and think differently, because your thinking narrows if you just think for one or two, but if you think for everybody, that's how you learn. So your learning dictionary widens.
That's true. Thank you, ma'am, very much for so many ideas that you've given us. For all the teachers and students, or even parents who would have joined us today, I'm sure this session would have given you plenty of ideas on how to engage your students and children and push them towards a more thinking and self thinking zone with a lot of creativity. As a closing remark, ma'am, would you like to summarize the key takeaways and any piece of advice that you would have for parents and teachers both for enabling a very thinking related environment for their children and students?
Well, I think the first and the foremost takeaway that I'd like to share is that good schools are here, right? And you don't need infrastructure, a good infrastructure to build a good school. So the idea of an AC school with AC tiles or the fancy tiles and with lavish staff or a swimming pool is not school. It is part of the school, but that's not a benchmark to look at a school. School is here, right? And second of all, the very important and the most neglected lot in our schools is our alumni, who is part of fantastic industries these days. They should be part of the school. They are the real heroes. They are your upbringing. So if they come back and share the best of what they've learned and give it back to the previous generation, I think it saves it all. That is like there. And then industry. Working with industry is so important. And also industry should not shy away from hand-holding schools. We need you, right? So that is important. And clubs and co-curriculars are not waste of time. So it is not that when you have exams, you should stop playing, you should stop going to theater classes, you should stop exercising. No, this is not real. Life doesn't work like that. So don't train your students for unreal situations. Train them for a real world. So in our real life, we get 5 deadlines at the moment. How are we going to manage it? So that is what we should be training students on, so that they don't suffer when they join job industry. And assessments. Everything starts from assessments and everything closes on assessments. Why are we studying? Is so important than what we are studying. So that's it.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking our time and sharing your expertise and your ideas and very creative solutions that you have for each and everyone who has joined us for this session today. So instead of looking at extracurriculars, we need to look at extracurriculars more as co-curriculars and have them embedded into our system of learning and educating to create a better generation of next set of students who come in, and that will closer kind of bridge the gap between the corporates and industries and the school education educating system that we have in place now. Thank you everybody who has also taken out time and joined us today. And if you have any more questions, you can keep posting and we will see to it that we can get back to you with whatever solutions you need. And a very big thank you to you, Dr. Nima Chitkara.
Thank you, Mary. I really enjoyed interacting with you. I really had a good time.
The pleasure is all mine, ma'am. And we will soon meet each and every one of you in much more insightful webinars and engaging discussions with industry leading experts. Until then, this is a very good evening. I am and me, Mary Nader, along with Dr. Niyati Chitkara. Very good evening. Thank you and bye.